You guys know that there were at least 3 wizards in Middle-earth: Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast. But there were actually, at bare minimum, 2 more. These were the Blue Wizards, and like Gandalf, they were sent to Middle-earth to help men, elves, and dwarves fight against Sauron. Most believe that they failed and became seduced by the Dark Lord. In fact, that's the major opinion that most Tolkien fans and YouTubers share. But they're not entirely correct. The Blue Wizards not only succeeded, but without them, it's very likely that Gandalf and the Fellowship of the Ring would have been completely overwhelmed by Sauron, and all of Middle-earth would have been enslaved. So what happened to the Blue Wizards? Why were they more important than people know? Let's start at the beginning. What do you know about the Wizards of Middle-earth? They were not just a group of 5 old guys with magical staffs and cool, colorful robes. They were actually 5 gods from a distant land called Valinor. They were sent to the continent of Middle-earth during the late 2nd and early 3rd Age to help root out Sauron. The greater gods who sent them, the Valar, made these 5 lesser gods conceal their true power, so they dressed as old, wise men. In fact, the word wizard isn't even a synonym for magician or sorcerer in Middle-earth originally, but instead more or less means someone who knows the secret history of the world. These wizards, also known as the Astari, were allowed to only use a fraction of their abilities, and were told by the great Valar gods to only focus on advising and encouraging men in their struggle against Sauron. Initially, it seemed like all the wizards arrived at about the same time, the year 1000 in the Third Age. That's at least true in some of the text. But later histories revealed that the Blue Wizards likely arrived in the Second Age, at least a millennium before Gandalf. But when they reached the western shores of Middle-earth, they didn't stay there. They headed to the far east to a region that the High Elves and kingdoms founded by Númenórean men had long forgotten about. There, in the distant land of Rhun, the Blue Wizards sought out Sauron's influence among the eastern kingdoms. Now, at this point, Tolkien originally wrote that the Blue Wizards either simply failed or fell to Sauron's corruption. He also guessed that the wizards themselves might have developed their own dark cults in the region, but in later years, he wrote something else entirely. Among the people of the Eastern Territories, the Easterlings were the most dominant. These forces were absolutely brutal, and we saw them team up with Melkor, and later Sauron, throughout all ages of Middle-earth. Of their forces, there were Wain Riders, a brand of cavalry and chariot riders who would destroy everything in their path. Imagine the Mongols, Huns, or any of the peoples of our world that attacked Rome, and you could probably get an idea of them. When the Blue Wizards came to Rhun, they were not only facing a group of people that absolutely hated the West, which would have been stressful enough to try and navigate through, but they also worshipped and served the Dark Lords, and in this time, that was Sauron. The Blue Wizards arguably took on the greatest challenge in Middle-earth. Think about it. Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast definitely had a hard time, sure, but in their respective regions, ranging from Gondor in the south to the Shire in the north, there were no real fiefdoms loyal to Sauron. Besides the dark creatures, orcs, and trolls, the wizards were free to walk through most parts of Middle-earth. But just imagine walking through Rhun. It's basically a landmass as big as Asia, but almost entirely populated by the enemy. That would literally be like walking through Mordor for your entire life in Middle-earth. So what if Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast had walked around the base of Mount Doom and the Mountains of Shadow for thousands of years, dealing with orcs, trolls, and Nazgul on a daily basis? That is more similar to the life of the Blue Wizards than the comparatively easy lives that the other 3 wizards led when schmoozing with Gondorian nobility and the Ents of Fangorn Forest. Now, Tolkien might have been overstating the evilness of the people in the land of Rhun. In The Lord of the Rings, he even wonders whether they truly were fully evil, as orcs were, or were just men tricked or forced into a terrible war. Since that land, the actual birthplace of early man and elves, and even home to a distant clan of dwarves, I'm sure that they all held diverse beliefs. They couldn't all have blindly followed Sauron, right? And the fact that the Easterlings succumbed to Sauron's influence and rule wasn't even that unique. Plenty of ancient kingdoms in the west of Middle-earth, and even the entirety of powerful kingdoms of Númenor, were under Sauron's control. To varying degrees, of course. Still, I really just want to emphasize how hard the Blue Wizards' job was. These guys were OGs. They were in the land of the enemy, and they succeeded. In the Far East, in the kingdoms that spotted Rhun, the Blue Wizards went about their secret mission of disrupting Sauron's support. They infiltrated both Sauron's religious acolytes and noble fiefs. With their power to inspire and give hope to men, the Blue Wizards led whole factions to revolt against their Sauron-worshipping leaders. It was their systematic series of revolts that helped weaken Sauron's strength in the region. Tolkien said this on the matter. They must have had very great influence on the history of the Second Age and Third Age in the wakening and disarraying the forces of East, who would both in the Second Age and Third Age otherwise have outnumbered the West. So if you've heard anything else on the Blue Wizards, then it's based on earlier statements from Tolkien. Over time, he realized that their role must have been much more important than he first thought. Just imagine how incredible it must have been. These two wizards, much like Gandalf, were tasked with inspiring the men of Middle-earth. But unlike Gandalf, who could openly and freely talk about the need to stand against Sauron, the Blue Wizards probably had to do it in secret. I like to imagine them as equal parts revolutionary and equal parts detectives. They were probably wandering around Rhun looking for low-level priests or shamans in the Melkor or Sauron-worshipping cults. And after working those guys over, the wizards would follow the threads all the way back to the leaders of the religions. Once they found the leaders, they probably concocted really awesome schemes to either undermine them, embarrass them in front of their following, or take them out using the rebel forces. We can only imagine what the Blue Wizards had truly done in order to disrupt Sauron's power in the East, but it must have been incredible, and all of Middle-earth should be thankful. Let me know what you guys think about the Blue Wizards in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, please, if you want to see more like it, and subscribe if you're new here. I'll catch you all in the next video. Have a great day. Oh, but until then, remember, I like it raw and